All right, so today let's dive into the mind of this guy, Auguste Comte. Now, he's a fascinating figure because he looked out at his world, which was, just completely broken, and he dared to ask this one simple but really dangerous question.
And that question was this: why is society so unstable? I mean, this haunted him. It drove his entire life's work. He just couldn't get his head around it. Why were people always so angry, so confused, fighting with each other all the time? What was fundamentally broken about how we all live together?
So to really get where Comte was coming from, you've got to picture the world he was born into. We're not talking about some peaceful, quiet era. No way. This was an age of revolution, of total upheaval, just constant rattling change.
Seriously, just try to imagine it. The entire old world was, literally falling apart at the seams. The French Revolution had just flipped everything upside down. Kings were getting their heads chopped off. The church, which had been in control for centuries, was losing its grip. And on top of all that, you have the Industrial Revolution kicking off, shoving people into these smoky cities, into brand new ways of living. Society was just chaos.
And this is the world Comte was born into back in 1798, right in the middle of this absolute storm. He didn't read about this stuff in a history book. He grew up breathing it. This chaos wasn't some abstract concept to him. It was his day-to-day reality.
So sitting there, surrounded by all of this instability, Comte has this genuinely revolutionary idea. He notices this huge contradiction in how people were thinking. On one hand, we were starting to master the natural world, right? But on the other, we were still completely clueless about our own societies.
He looked around and saw that we were figuring out these predictable, solid laws for everything else. Physics? Yep, laws. Chemistry? Laws. Biology? Same deal. But when it came to understanding ourselves, our communities, our countries, we were just winging it. We were relying on gut feelings, old religious texts, and just raw emotion. There were no rules, no method, no science to it at all.
And this is what led him to his big idea. He basically said, look, if science can explain the orbits of planets and the reactions of chemicals, then why on earth can't we use that same thinking to understand human society? It seems so obvious now, but back then, that was a wild thought.
And boom, with that one powerful question, a whole new field of study was born. He originally called it social physics, which, you gotta admit, sounds pretty awesome. But the name that stuck, the one we all know today, is sociology, the scientific study of society.
Okay, so how do you even begin to apply science to something as messy and complicated as human society? Well, Comte's most famous idea for this uses a really clever analogy. He argued that entire societies, they grow up intellectually, just like a person does, from a kid into an adult.
He called this the law of 3 stages. So stage 1 is the theological stage. Think of this as society's childhood. Everything that happens is because of gods or spirits. A thunderstorm? Oh, the gods must be angry. Simple as that. Then you get to stage 2, the metaphysical stage. This is basically society's teenage years. It starts questioning everything, right? It replaces God with these big abstract ideas like nature or reason or human rights. It's rebellious, it's argumentative, it's kind of confused. And then finally, society reaches the positive stage. This is adulthood. It stops guessing, it starts observing, it relies on science, on verifiable facts, on cold, hard evidence.
And that's the whole goal. For Comte, the entire point of human history was for society to finally, to grow up. To leave all the superstitions and the endless philosophical debates in the past and to build itself on a solid foundation of scientific fact.
But here's the thing. Comte wasn't just some philosopher with his head in the clouds. He was super practical. He knew that this journey toward a scientific society could be just as chaotic as the world he was born into. And so he had this really important warning, especially for all the revolutionaries who were screaming about freedom above all else.
And his warning was this: you simply cannot have progress without order. It's impossible. Freedom without any kind of structure, that just leads to chaos, to anarchy. This was his direct response to the revolution. You've got to have a stable foundation if you ever want to build something better.
So, to dig into this, he split his new science into 2 main parts. The first part he called social statics. The easy way to think about this is it's the study of social stability. It's all the things that act like the glue holding society together. Family, religion, language, government.
And the second part? That's social dynamics. This is the total flip side. This is the study of change and progress. These are the engines that push society forward, the forces that move it through those 3 stages we were just talking about.
So for Comte, the ideal society, the perfect society, was a balance between these two things. You need the stability of order plus the forward momentum of progress. Order and progress. And this simple idea became so influential that, and this is a great piece of trivia, it is still written on the national flag of Brazil today. How wild is that?
Now, it's worth mentioning that later in his life, Comte's thinking kind of shifted. He took a more emotional turn. He came to believe that science, by itself, wasn't enough to hold a society together. You also need a shared sense of morality. He even proposed a whole new religion of humanity and really pushed this idea of altruism, which is basically just the principle of living for others.
But look, if you're going to remember just one thing from all this, make it this. This one sentence perfectly sums up his whole project. Ready? Comte saw a fighting society, treated it like a child, taught it science, and asked it to grow up. That's it right there.
And that, of course, leaves us with a pretty fascinating and maybe a little uncomfortable question for today. I mean, we live in an age of big data, AI, and all these scientific wonders. But if you look around at the world right now, can we honestly say we've reached Comte's positive stage? Is our society really run by facts and evidence? Or are we still stuck in our teenage years, run by something else entirely? It's definitely something to think about.